All right, so I want to make a video on my breakdown of the video that was posted between Ben Shapiro and Bibi Netanyahu. Earlier today, Bibi Netanyahu and Ben Shapiro posted a propaganda video on, I guess, they covered a variety of topics: Israel's position on the U.S., their views on the wars in the Middle East. And, it was a propaganda video, as any video with a government figure is. But I will say it was a well-made video. It probably changed the opinions of some people out there. It didn't necessarily change my opinion on the whole situation between Israel and Palestine in Gaza and the West Bank. But I want to first break down Israel's positions. So, Israel claims that they are close to ending the war in Gaza. They have claimed that they have smashed the Iranian nuclear program. We'll get into that later, because they later go back on it a little bit. They claim that they've smashed Hezbollah and Syria and their enemies in the Middle East. And they've claimed that they have smashed Hamas, but Hamas is still there. So their position on war is that they have succeeded in getting rid of a list of enemies. And they say that this all started on October 7th. They compare October 7th. They say it's the largest attack on Jews and Judaism since the Shoah, since the Holocaust. And they said something specifically, that the Hamas hostages are being used as blackmail, not only against Israel, but blackmail to the entire world, blackmail to the free world. They have a list of demands. They demand, according to Netanyahu, one of the things they are demanding is a release of all hostages, which they say that there are 46 and 20 of them are alive. And so a release of hostages and an end to the Hamas-run government in the Middle East. So they want all the hostages gone, and they want Hamas to leave the territory of Gaza. And they said after that, we are willing to expand peace. We're willing to go into a peace process after. Another thing they brought up, and this ties back into when they talked about smashing, destroying the Iranian nuclear program. They say that Iran is developing now missiles, ICBMs with an additional, I believe, 3,000 miles greater than what they had before. So they're saying that Iran is holding the world hostage through its ICBM program and its proxies, such as the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. So Israel's position we can see they have two positions. One, that they are very effective in destroying all their enemies, but at the same time they are being held hostage, and that Iran is developing missiles that are a threat to us all. And he also went into the U.S.-Israeli relations, and he says that the America First position is natural, but it's not America alone, that America shouldn't try to do things alone. And he went after other American allies, such as Western Europe, and he says that they are not fighting allies, that they are not self-sufficient allies, that Israel itself pulls its weight, specifically with information and tech development. He said that Israel saves American lives, that they have saved American lives from ISIS in the past, and that we use Israeli tech for offense and defense. And let's see. And I have some problems with that personally. One, the fact that Israel pulls its weight. I mean, they're famously, they wanted all these countries in the Middle East that pose a threat to Israel in the past. I forgot the name of the memo, but there was a memo, and all the regimes that Israel had a problem with in the Middle East, they're all gone, with the sole exception of Iran, who's still around. And those regimes were overthrown with American troops. They say that they also use Israeli tech for American offense and defense, and Israeli information specifically. And I do have a problem with that also, because are they just being used? For example, he was talking a lot specifically about, I guess you could call it cybersecurity. I imagine that's what he was referencing. A lot of Americans, especially in the younger generation, are wary of Israeli tech being used to spy on Americans. And, we see things about like Trump deporting those who are critical of Israel. The people who, Trump deporting those who are critical of Israel, as well as, monitoring people who are coming into the country to see if they have criticized Israel in the past. So, part of that, they're watching out for us with their technology. Are they really watching out for them for America's sake, or are they watching out for the sake of, I guess, Jews in America, who, are American citizens, but if we are allies with the country, we'd prefer that they, want to protect all citizens of our country the same way that we protect, their citizens. He says another thing that, America's enemies, specifically mentioning Iran, that these enemies chant death to America, and that they don't have a high opinion of us. And the thing is with that, do the Israelis really have a high opinion of us? I mean, you hear the horror stories of American Christians visiting Israel, and how they're spat on and how they're mistreated. And, whether someone spits on me for my religion, and, America is a fairly Christian country. If someone spits on me or chants death to America, the message is the same. The message is the same. These people don't like me, or they don't like us. And, whether they're verbal about it or they demonstrate it through their actions, I'm going to be left feeling the same way. Yeah, Bibi Netanyahu also brought up the fact that Israel's goal has been to become self-sufficient, and he did bring up about how he shifted their economy, and they have become a more free market economy, and they have become more economically self-reliant. And, he says he thanks America for all the loans and grants and all the money we have given their countries, but he's willing to move, I guess. He's willing to pivot to a more independent direction, and, that's something we'll just have to see with all the money we've given their country. And it's honestly something I don't entirely buy. I don't believe that they're going to continue to be like self-sufficient. I mean, we've seen in the past that they've been willing to I guess take U.S. money and then just buy a bunch of grants and loans. They get a grant, and then they use that to buy bonds, and then they sell those bonds, and they devalue them. And, I'm not really a fan of that. And, if they became economically self-sufficient in that way, who's to say they're not going to become militarily self-sufficient the way they want to, in the same way, in a way that damages America? Because, one of the things that, for example, the port of Haifa, it's the largest port in Israel. It's owned by, I believe, an Indian company, but it's ran by the Chinese, by the SIPG, the Shanghai International Port Group. And that was done under the Netanyahu administration, you know? I don't want to see Israeli independence or Israeli gains done on an American loss. I don't want to see China being strengthened because, they turn their back on us and pivot elsewhere. And, China, I don't know why they are choosing to receive support from China, who has historically supplied Iran. They have supplied the Houthis. They've supplied Hamas. They've supplied Hezbollah. And, even there's even members of the Knesset who are talking about, hey, this is a bad deal, That first of all, that puts a lot of that's a massive security threat on behalf of the United States. If we were to go, for example, we needed to refuel or rearm or restock our ships and it's run by the Chinese, they could, in a time of war, they could damage their cranes, they could block our ships from receiving the things that they need. And let's see. Lastly, there's a few things that also, they made me think a bit. Bibi Netanyahu is talking about his relationship with Trump. And, he says, he talks about, like, okay, who would win? The United States and Israel. They don't agree on everything. Who wins out? He had said, Bibi Netanyahu said, we want to see who would win out. And, he implied that, he said afterward that Trump would win out in negotiations between him and the United States. But that's not something we've really seen in practice. In practice, it seems that Israel is winning out in every negotiation. I think the only thing that Trump went out on is when he said, hey, you got to apologize to Qatar for bombing the Hamas negotiators. And he pivots a lot, and, he pins a lot of this American distrust on Jews to historical anti-Semitism, that because he says that, there's a cyclical wave of anti-Semitism that rises and falls, and that he says we're just in a time that it's rising. And he accused, being critical of Israel and critical of the Jews to, historical accusations such as poisoning of wells and blood libel. And he tells that American Jews that in the U.S. that they should be proud of who they are, they should stand up and they should defend themselves. And, I don't want American Jews to be loyal to Israel. I want them to be loyal to the United States as American citizens. And this dual loyalty is something that I'm personally very skeptical of. I do think that if an American Jew who is in danger, he should have the right to defend himself. He has a Second Amendment. He should be able to defend himself at any and all costs, lethal force if necessary, if his life is in danger. But I also don't want that person to view a distrust of Israel, geopolitically, as anti-Semitism, which is what Netanyahu seems to be implying. And then he talks about what comes next for Israel. He talks about potential expansion of the Abrahamic Accords, which would not only include, I guess, Middle Eastern Muslim countries, but also, I guess, it would be Southeast Asian Muslim countries. That could be maybe the Philippines, Indonesia, countries where they also have a Muslim majority, but they aren't in the Middle Eastern group. And he also, and there's the last thing he talked about internal divisions in Israel. He says that they are funded through political NGOs. He says that we face these on the right too, face these in the United States too, these NGOs, and that they promote, I guess you could say, violent and/or radical left-wing ideologies. And we do see those in the United States, these NGOs. But there is a problem with that statement. I mean, a lot of the NGOs that are created in the United States that are promoting these left-wing ideals that Netanyahu is critical of are made or are funded by American secular Jews. So, I mean, they could have a problem in Israel with, I guess, NGOs promoting these things, promoting division, but the NGOs that are in the United States they might have similar, I think it'd be like, what's it called? Convergent evolution, where two things appear similar but are different due to how they evolved. They're different species, but they evolved to and adapted to be very similar. And it seems like, in my opinion, I haven't looked too deep into it, it seems that it's convergent evolution. These groups in the United States are funded through, they're funded through foreign powers. They're funded through these billionaires, but those billionaires in the United States have a lot of things in common. And when he was talking a little bit about these groups in Israel, he said that they were, I believe he said they're like, they use minorities. I don't know if they mean political or racial minorities, but he said that they are done through, he was talking to like a lot of Arab countries when he was bringing this up. So, I would imagine they'd be funded through, for example, the country Iran. They'd be funded through, I guess, Syria before they were, more westernly aligned. They would be funded through Iraq or China. They wouldn't be funded through the same means as the United States. They're different. There's different people giving the money, despite similarities. And lastly, he says that Israel is the U.S.'s final position on the Middle East, and I would love for that to be the case. I'd love to be allies with Israel if they shared our values, but in my opinion, just breaking this down, I don't think that it's been going that way. I wouldn't say Israel's self-sufficient despite what Netanyahu claimed. I wouldn't say they necessarily pull their weight despite what they claimed. Americans went and died in those wars in the Middle East, and Israel didn't really help us. I wouldn't say that the technology that's being used for offense and defense is necessarily beneficial to Americans. And I wouldn't say that this pivot from America to independence is really to military independence is necessarily independent. I would say that they're relying more on people who have been historical enemies to the United States, such as Russia and China. So I want to say one thing, that it's not anti-Semitism to be critical of Israel. And I think despite what they claimed, that Israel, I might have misunderstood this, but I don't think that Israel is the best country in terms of, I was going to say something. I'll just cut here and I'll think about it in 2 minutes. All right, so yeah, I remember what I was going to say. I don't necessarily think that, they claim that they want to end Hamas. I don't think that can be done without, just clearing the Gaza Strip and the West Bank entirely. And, it's us Americans are very wary of funding a genocide, and we despise the idea of it. We are immoral people. And, you can't say something. We demand the release of the hostages and an end to Hamas rule. Those are two entirely different things. You can have the hostages released, and that'd be fine. That's honestly preferable. But, if you add end Hamas rule to the end of that, ending Hamas is very vague. And it seems to a lot of Americans, from what we've seen, that it just means end Palestine, end any idea of an independent Palestine. And that I feel that Americans are going to end up being the ones who are going to end up footing the bill and paying and building it all up. So, demanding a release of the hostages and ending of Hamas, they're two completely different ideas. I don't like Hamas. I despise the group. But there's only going to be one way you can actually clear them out, and that's, in my opinion, genocide or going house to house, which we haven't seen as much. I mean, we've seen the footage, and it's just a lot of bombings. Compared to if you go and see videos from 2004 Iraq, even up to like 2008 Iraq, they would go in there, they'd clear house to house to house to house to house. And I just don't see that. So I think that it's just ending with a lot of bloodshed of innocent civilians. And Americans, naturally, are very wary of that. That's just my thoughts. Done.